basically telling people to eat maize.
So now what we got them to admit was that maize is the chosen food for all South Africans. It's the ideal food. Why? Because it's the only food you can afford. That was what we got them to admit. So because the bulk of the South African population eat maize as their primary food, and when this community moves to the cities, they get sick. That's the argument. Therefore, we must all go back to the diet that they're eating. The fact that maize has only been in South Africa since 1890, and has only been a staple food since 1930, and it was purely because the white farmers wanted to make money, and which of course people didn't know. I never knew that. But the South African government invested in them because we were importing maize. So why should we import maize? Why should we make farmers of Lesotho wealthy when we can make our own farmers wealthy? And so we've got this huge maize belt in South Africa. So it was the white farmers making the maize, which became the staple food for all South Africans. And we removed meat and dairy out of the diet.
The thing that I'm confused about is that they understand that this is a super high starch food, high in carbohydrates. So how could health professionals proclaim that this is a healthy food if they know that it can create diabetes? I mean, do they argue that?
No, it doesn't cause that. Sorry, doesn't cause diabetes. Diabetes is caused by eating too much fat and not exercising.
How does?
Because they follow Walter Willett.
How does fat spike your glucose?
Because they follow Walter Willett and the Harvard Medical School, and who are funded by the farmers, funded by the vegetable oil industry.
But blood sugar regulation.
Yeah, exactly.
They still think it's from fat.
Yeah.
But people don't eat fat.
No.
They eat carbohydrates.
No. There's this cognitive dissonance, which is utterly astonishing. Because Walter Willett at Harvard says that grains and cereals and grains are healthy for you. And because in their studies they managed to find somehow an association between meat and diabetes, meat causes diabetes. But you, like me, a biologist, you start with the biology, say, how the possibly can it? No, we don't talk biology. Because we don't teach our dietitians biology.
Exactly.
They're not qualified to study biology. So all they get is a rote menu about what they do. And if you were to ask any dietitian that, they couldn't answer it.
What about the studies for a high-fat diet for drug-resistant epilepsy? Do they recognize that?
Oh yes, that they'll accept. That they'll accept because it's published in a good journal, and this is extreme cases. So you can use, that's the only time you can use a low carbohydrate diet. The hospital here, the ruling here, now Cape Town is the center for diabetes probably in Africa. And at this hospital, you may not prescribe a low carbohydrate diet for anyone. So
this
the diabetics
is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Because I think even in the US, they're like, you have to cut down on these carbohydrates.
Exactly right. No, you don't do it.
People are crazy.
Yeah, they are. And that's why we have this diabetes explosion.
Wow.
Yeah. This literally, it's catastrophic.
When did the curve go up with the diabetic numbers? Has it been in the last 10 years, 20 years?
Well, I graduated here 74, 74, sorry, and we didn't see much diabetes. So it's subsequent to that. It probably is the last 10 years, and it's on the exponential curve. But we just don't have data, you see. We don't have enough data on that. We're just a data-poor country.
What about the banting craze, right? Banting meats and Facebook pages and all of this. If the government feels that they can make money off of the low carb high fat, that still does not play a role because America is so capitalist driven that is there any leeway based on being able to generate money from it?
Well, they don't understand how much savings they would make.
Okay.
You have to look at the medical side. That's where the saving is, and they don't see that yet. And because industry's in there here all the time, big food. I mean, yesterday, 2 days ago, we've just started this new Coca-Cola bottling plant in South Africa. The biggest in Africa.
Oh, no.
And government has supported that.
Where? What
I'm not sure what part of South Africa, but they had to go to the competition board because there were 2 groups joining up to make these bottles.
So, have you written a second book? or are you writing it now?
Sorry. So we've written The Real Meal Revolution. Then we put a child's book called
And then you have the
Raising
book.
Superheroes. That's
Yes,
right.
Raising Superheroes.
So the book. Sorry, what I'm actually writing. Sorry, I wasn't quite correct. I wrote a book called Challenging Beliefs, which describes all the things that I've challenged in my career.
Okay.
And
This is
that
interesting.
So I wrote the first edition, and it didn't really do very well because people thought it was challenging religion, you see. So then they decided, well, we better do something.
Okay,
And
now
then-
you're challenging religion on nutrition. Okay, go ahead.
That's right. So anyway, the second edition came out just after I changed my diet. So they said, why don't you add another chapter on changing your diet? So I did. And that then was the first statement I made publicly. And so people started reading it and they were interested. And then we wrote The Real Meal. And then The Real Meal just went ballistic.
Ballistic.
It just went
Because through my travels, I have people who follow me
exactly.
who have the
Yeah,
book.
that's
They're
right.
like, here's the book. You go to
Yeah.
each town, like, here's the book. So a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
them, just the book.
Yeah, no, it's been the best seller. It's just broken all the rules.
Mm.
And it continues to sell. And this is like a year and a half or 2 years down the road. And it was lovely yesterday. Just check my time. I had to be rude.
Oh, no.
But I've got a lecture at 12.
Yeah.
But Sonia O'Sullivan, who's one of the great Irish runners, she's won 16 medals, gold medals, etc. in competition. And she was in Melbourne and she was running with a physiotherapist. He says, you have to read this book, you see, The Real Meal. And there she writes in the Irish Times. Actually, I've always eaten this way, but now I really understand. Yeah, and so that's happening all the time. Yeah.
So what do you want to do now moving forward, like in your passion projects?
Sure. So when we started, and we wrote The Real Meal Revolution, that was to convert the upper strata of South Africa, because it's very much that strata. And we managed to get enough traction to make a difference. So it became the talking point of South Africa, and it continues to be for the last 2 years. So everyone knows now sugar's not good for you. That now everyone accepts. And refined carbohydrates, they're not good for you. Everyone knows that. But there's only a certain proportion who are prepared to cut the sugar and get off the addictions. And then those people buy in, and the ones who lose lots of weight. You know, I've just been to a small talk with a group at a new banting place for Muslim people. So it's all for
Oh, really?
Muslim. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's amazing. You see, and that was, and I met about 30 people there, and you know that. And then one lady gave me, from her Facebook page, they all asked someone to leave a message for Tim Noakes. And like, it's 5 pages. You're my hero. You changed my life. I lost 40 kilograms. You know, that sort of thing. And so what we've done is we've changed the strata, got the top strata thinking. And they have forced the doctors to start thinking. Because now the patient comes along and says, I've lost 40 kilograms. And I see it at the medical school, you see. There was one black kid wrote to me and he said, I lost 30 kilograms. I'm a second year medical student, I lost 30 kilograms. He says, I want to promote this thing. And that's fantastic. And so the doctors now, and then the other thing is that the medical students' parents have changed. So they come along and they're told, oh, you're not allowed to talk about banting. They're not allowed to talk about banting, you see.
They're not allowed.
Yeah. And then they said, but my mother cured her diabetes and you don't teach us this, why not? And these are clever children.
Playtime.
So that's the second thing. Now the third thing, what we've started is a program intervened in the poorest communities in South Africa. We've had 6 interventions and they are astonishing because these are the communities who are eating, just living on sugar and refined carbohydrates. And when you take it up, their health improves within days. I mean, literally within days, as you know.
Yeah.
And the results within 6 weeks. And so that's where we're raising money, and that's where we're going to undermine the whole thing from the bottom. Yeah. And we've developed an eating plan for 30 Rand a day, which is you can bant on 30 Rand a day.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that people don't understand is that they can affordably, in a certain context, be able to eat a low carb, banting diet without having the maize in their diet or the soda. And a lot of soda here.
And then so I was at Atlantis. Atlantis is the forgotten town like Cape Town. They moved a community out there, just said, you live here. And they just left. And it's rife with crime and so on. It's public.
Yeah.
And we had 30 women on a program for 6 weeks, and they were all there. I mean, they just get up and they tell you what's changed.
Yeah.
And what changes is the blood pressure drops within a week or 2. Now they don't need the blood pressure medicines. Now what they have to do, they have to go to the hospital. They have to travel to the hospital, costs them money. They spend a whole day there, out of work, and that happens once a month. So that now, instead of having to pay all the money to go and waste a day where they could be working, that now money is in their pockets. You know? And so the benefits are, the knock-on benefits are enormous.
They're enormous.
Yeah. And this is a community that had no power. The people were disempowered. They said, the first time I've got power now, I can control myself, I can control my weight, I can control my health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of them said to me, you know, she was petrified. She said, my parents both had diabetes. I know what happened to diabetes. I wasn't going to go to the doctor because I knew what he was going to say. You're going to get diabetes. But he wouldn't give me a solution. You've given us a solution. Yeah.
Well, what happens if you get sticky in the court case? Will you be able to still help these communities?
I can't lose this case. I cannot lose it.
I don't think you will.
No, I can't lose it.
No, I'm going to put some good
Yeah.
energy on you.
No, they have been destroyed at every.
Okay.
Because my constitutional rights were infringed for a start.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't give any specific advice to any one person.
But it's much more that they never gave us the sheet, the charge sheet, and they refused to give it to us.
Oh,
and that is, you cannot charge someone without giving the charge sheet, which is,
exactly.
and they refused to do it. No, they at every level, it is a complete disaster for them.
So they just looked for just you to do one thing, and then they just tried to. But they grabbed the wrong thing.
They grabbed the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And you know, my lawyers are very clever. We worked on. There are 6 people making a judgment, and you know, every day they say, well, you know, that person picked up that point, but she didn't quite understand it. You need to re-stress it again. They're reading the group, and this is off the record.
Yeah, of course. This is.